The sun was setting behind the dry Texas hills, casting long orange shadows across the open plains. Dust swirled in the breeze, and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and hay. At the edge of a lonely ranch, the world seemed quiet too. Quiet until a soft knock echoed against the heavy wooden door of the ranch house. Silas Rourke was finishing supper beans, cornbread and black coffee when he heard it. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth, and frowned. Visitors didn't come out this far, not unless they were lost or in trouble. He stood slowly, boots creaking on the wooden floor, and made his way to the door with a rifle resting near the frame, just in case. When he opened it, he expected a ranch hand needing help or maybe a traveling peddler looking for directions. But what he saw made his heart lurch in a way it hadn't in years. 2 children stood on his porch. A girl, maybe 9 years old, stood tall with her chin lifted, though her knees wobbled with exhaustion. Her long blonde hair was matted with dust and sweat, her dress torn at the hem. Beside her, a boy no more than 6 clung to her hand, sniffling, his face blotched with dried tears and grime. His shoes were 2 sizes too big, and his shirt was buttoned wrong. They looked like they had walked for miles. The girl opened. Her mouth first. Her voice was small but steady. "Sir, our daddy died this morning. Can we sleep in your barn tonight?" Silas didn't respond right away. He simply looked at them, really looked. Their cheeks were sunburned, their feet blistered, their eyes hollow with a grief no child should have to bear. The boy wouldn't meet his gaze. He pressed his face into his sister's arm and whimpered softly. Silas felt something stir deep. In his chest, something long buried. "How'd you get here?" he asked, voice low and rough from years of disuse. The girl answered. "We walked. Been walking since midday," she hesitated. "Our horse ran off after Daddy, after he." Silas exhaled through his nose. He didn't need the details. He'd seen too much death in his time cattle drives gone wrong, fevers. Taking whole families, even his own daughter, gone before she'd seen 12 springs. Loss had a way of burning itself into a man's bones. But seeing it in these kids, it hit different. He could have said no. He almost did. It would have been easier. No attachments. No trouble. Let the sheriff handle it. But then the little boy looked up at him, just for a second, with eyes the same color as the sky before a storm. There was a quiet, desperate question in them. "Please." Silas cleared his throat, stepped back from the door, and said, "You don't need the barn. Come inside. I'll get you cleaned up." The girl's eyes widened. "Really?" "You're safe now," he said, and something in him cracked open. He guided them in, his boots thudding on the floorboards behind their small, uneven footsteps. The cabin was plain, just one large room with a stove, a table, and a bed tucked behind a curtain. It smelled of leather, wood smoke, and pipe tobacco. Not a place made for children. But tonight, it would be. Silas pulled a quilt from a cedar chest and laid it by the fire. "You 2 can sleep here for now. I'll fetch water and something warm to eat." The girl helped her brother sit, gently brushing the hair from his face. "Thank you, mister," she said. "I'm Lily. This here's Thomas." Silas nodded. "I'm Silas, just Silas." He stepped outside to the pump, the cool metal biting at his fingers as he filled a basin with water. The stars were all ready, peeking through the twilight, and the moon was rising silver and silent. He remembered how his daughter used to chase fireflies around the porch, how his wife sang lullabies, just like the wind now humming through the trees. He hadn't let anyone into his heart since he lost them. He didn't think he could. But tonight, 2 broken little souls had shown up at his door asking for a place in the barn, and somehow they'd walk straight into the house and into something deeper. When he returned, Lily was humming quietly to her brother, who had already curled up and fallen asleep. Silas placed the warm water beside her. She whispered, "Thank you," again, and then curled up beside Thomas. Silas sat at the table, watching the fire crackle. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring or what trouble might follow these children. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't sending them back out into the night, not now. Not ever. The morning sun spilled over the hills, golden and soft, casting long light through the dusty windows of Silas Rourke's cabin. The fire had died to glowing coals, but the warmth lingered. On the floor near the hearth, the two children still slept, curled into each other beneath the quilt he'd laid out the night before. Silas sat at the table, sipping his coffee in silence. His old dog Buck lay beneath his chair, twitching in a dream. The quiet was familiar, but no longer comfortable. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt paused, like something was waking up. He hadn't slept much. He'd spent most of the night staring into the fire, thinking about the girl's eyes, how determined they were, even through the sorrow. And the boy, so small and fragile, who'd clung to her like she was the last safe place in the world. Silas had known that kind of loss. He knew what it meant to keep breathing when you didn't want to. He looked across the room at the satchel. They dropped near the door. It was worn and patched. A child's name, L. Jameson, was stitched inside the flap in red thread. Beside it was a pair of tiny socks, rolled neatly. The kind of thing a mother might do once. He wondered how long these children had been carrying their own lives on their backs. Just then, the little boy stirred. Thomas sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. His blond hair stuck up in tufts. For a moment, he looked confused, then he spotted Silas across the room and froze. He stared, wide-eyed and unsure. Silas cleared his throat. "Mornin', son." Thomas didn't answer. His eyes darted to the door, to his sister, to the unfamiliar surroundings. "You're at my ranch. Safe here. You want something to eat?" Silas asked gently, setting his coffee down. Thomas blinked, then gave a tiny nod. Lily woke soon after. She sat up fast like she expected something to be wrong, then relaxed slightly when she saw her brother awake and Silas still in the room. She reached over and pulled Thomas close, smoothing his hair. "We didn't mean to stay too long," she said quietly. "We can go if we need to." "You ain't going anywhere on an empty stomach," Silas said. He tried to make it sound gruff, but the edge was gone. He stood and opened the old bread box, slicing off the last of a loaf and dropping it into the skillet with some scrambled eggs. "Eat first. Figure the rest after." Lily helped her brother to the table. He sat stiffly, like he was afraid to touch anything, even the plate Silas set in front of him. But when he caught the smell of the eggs, his hunger took over. He began to eat with wide eyes and quick bites. Lily smiled softly, the first time Silas had seen her expression ease since she arrived. "Thank you, Mr. Silas," she said. "Just Silas'll do." Lily looked around the cabin. "This your ranch?" "Been mine 23 years. Used to run cattle with my brothers. They've all moved on now. Just me and Buck these days." She glanced at the dog, who was now wagging his tail under the table. "He's friendly. He'll protect you for he bites you," Silas said with a shrug. "Good judge of character," Lily nodded. Then her voice dipped low. "Daddy always said we'd find kind folks somewhere. He just didn't get the chance to find him with us." Silas paused at the stove, his jaw tightening. "What happened to him?" Lily hesitated. "We were heading west. Looking for work after Mama died last winter. He got sick out near the ridge trail. Fever came on fast. He told me to find shelter. Said to follow the fence line and knock on any door I saw, and you found mine." "Yes, sir." Silas leaned against the counter. "He teach you how to cook?" Lily looked surprised. "Some. I used to help Mama." "You're a good sister," Silas said quietly. She looked down, cheeks flushed. Just doing what I gotta? That struck something in Silas. He'd said those same words long ago when he buried his wife and had to raise a little girl all on his own. Before illness took her too. He remembered her laughter echoing through this same room. How she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. She would have been about Lily's age now if life had gone differently. Maybe that was why he hadn't chased the kids off. Maybe something in him recognized the pain, the stubborn survival behind Lily's eyes. "I'll make room in the loft," he said after a long pause. "You can stay, for now." Lily's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. Silas didn't say more. He just poured a second cup of coffee, this time for someone other than himself. For the first time in years, the cabin felt less like a grave and more like a home. He wasn't ready to call it family. Not yet, but he didn't feel so alone anymore. By the third morning, the ranch didn't feel quite so quiet anymore. Silas stood on the porch with a mug of hot coffee, watching Lily carry a metal bucket twice her size from the pump to the trough. She spilled a little on the way, but kept going, determined not to ask for help. Her long hair was pulled back with a strip of old cloth, and her dress, though still patched, was clean now, thanks to the wash tub Silas dragged out of storage the day before. Thomas sat in the dirt with Buck, giggling as the old dog flopped over and let the boy pat his belly. The dog's tail thumped wildly against the porch rail, sending little clouds of dust into the air. Silas hadn't heard laughter like that in years. It rattled something inside him. It reminded him of wind chimes that used to hang near the window soft. Unexpected music. He took another sip of coffee and sighed. The children had only been with him 2 days, but already their presence filled every crack in his routine. They asked questions. They tracked mud across the floor. They found joy in things Silas had stopped noticing: sunlight on the creek, the smell of baking bread, even the hoot of a far-off owl dot at breakfast. Lily insisted on helping. She scrambled the eggs this time, standing on a stool and concentrating hard to keep from burning them. "Mama taught me to stir with love," she said, pouring them onto plates with a proud smile. Silas didn't say much, but he let her do it, and he ate every bite. Thomas liked the animals. He was fascinated by the horses in the corral, especially Silas's chestnut Maori Ruby. "Can I pet her?" he asked. "Only if she lets you," Silas replied, to his surprise. Ruby lowered her head when the boy approached. Thomas placed his tiny hand on her nose and whispered something. Silas didn't catch the words, but the Maori seemed to understand. She stood still, calm and gentle. Later that afternoon, Silas found the kids pulling weeds from the garden on their own. No one had asked them to. "Figured we should earn our keep," Lily said, glancing up. "We ain't freeloaders." Silas knelt beside her. "You're not hired hands either. You're just here. That's enough for now." Lily didn't respond right away. She pulled up another weed, then finally asked, "Do you live out here?" "All by yourself, Mr. Silas?" He nodded slowly. "Been that way a long time. Don't you get lonely?" He looked off toward the hills. "I used to. Then I stopped thinking about it." Lily was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Daddy got real quiet after Mama died, but he still tucked us in every night, even when he was sad." Silas didn't know how to answer that, so he simply said, "He sounds like a good man." "He was," she said, picking at the edge of her skirt. "He didn't deserve to die in the dirt." Silas swallowed hard. "No, he didn't." That night, he laid out more quilts in the loft above the barn, just in case they wanted a space of their own. But Thomas had already fallen asleep in front of the fire again, and Lily didn't seem in a hurry to leave his side. As Silas watched them, he thought about the ranch. It had once been filled with noise and life: his daughter's laughter, his wife's soft humming, even the chaos of branding days and late-night poker with neighboring ranchers. But for years now, the only sounds had been wind, hooves, and Silenced. Now there were small footsteps, giggling, chores being done without being asked, a boy telling Buck all his secrets, a girl trying her best not to cry when she thought no one was watching. The next morning, Silas saddled a second horse, an old roan gelding named Samson, and handed the reins to Lily. She blinked at him in disbelief. "You're gonna let me ride?" "Only around the paddock." "You fall off. I'm not chassing you." She grinned for the first time since she arrived. A real, full grin. Thomas clapped excitedly. "Can I ride too?" "One at a time," Silas said, his voice firm but not unkind. He watched Lily climb into the saddle, stiff and nervous. He stood beside her the whole time, guiding the horse slowly as she found her balance. She was awkward, but brave. "Hold. Your reins steady. Look where you're going. And sit tall," he instructed. "You sound like my daddy," she said. Silas looked away quickly. Well, maybe he knew what he was talking about. As the sun rose higher, Lily made her first full circle around the paddock on her own. Thomas cheered from the fence, and even Silas found himself smiling. The ranch wasn't just echoing with ghosts anymore. It was beginning to breathe again. 3 more days passed, and by now it was clear the children weren't just visitors, were becoming part of the ranch. Lily had taken to waking up before the sun, peeling potatoes or sweeping the porch before Silas even poured his first cup of coffee. Thomas had found a rhythm too, walking the fence line with Buck, handing nails to Silas while they patched a broken gate, and pretending he was a cowboy whenever Ruby let him near. And Silas. He didn't say much, but he didn't have to. He cooked double portions without asking why. He sharpened Lily's pocket knife. He carved a small wooden horse for Thomas and left it on the windowsill without a word. Every gesture was quiet but unmistakable. Then came the knock. It was a crisp morning, still early enough that the sun hadn't cleared the ridge. Silas was chopping wood out back when he heard the unmistakable sound of a horse approaching, and then boots on the porch. He froze, axe in mid-swing, then set it down carefully. Buck let out a low growl and moved toward the door. When Silas stepped around the corner, the sight waiting for him made his gut tighten. Sheriff Clay Barlow. Clay sat tall in the saddle, hat pulled low over weathered eyes, one hand resting near his holster, the other holding the reins. He was a fair man, but one who followed the letter of the law like it was gospel. If he was out here this early, it wasn't for coffee. "Morning, Silas," the sheriff said. "Barlow," Silas replied, slow and guarded. "What brings you this far off the road?" "Got some reports from town. Couple folks saying 2 stray. Kids have been seen near your property." Silas didn't blink. "Maybe." Barlow's tone remained even. "You want to tell me how they got here?" "They knocked on my door. Said their daddy died out on the ridge trail." "That true?" Silas nodded once. "Fever took him. Girl said he told them to keep walking and find help." "They found me." Barlow sighed and swung off his horse. "Silas, you know how this works. There's procedures. If they ain't got kin, I gotta send them to the orphanage in Abilene. Can't just have 'em staying out here like this." "They're not cattle, Clay," Silas said, voice hardening. "No, but they're still kids, and they're wards of the territory now. The law's the law." Just then the cabin door creaked open. Lily stood in the doorway, barefoot and pale, holding Thomas's hand. She'd clearly heard the conversation. "Are you tacking us?" she asked, her voice small but defiant. The sheriff's eyes softened slightly. "I don't want to, sweetheart, but I got a job to do." Silas stepped between them. "You'll have to come back another day, Clay. They're not going anywhere today." "Silas, I said what I said. Let him have breakfast at least." Clay studied him for a long moment, then looked past him to the children. "Finally," he sighed, "I'll give you a few days. But paperwork's already started. Unless you can prove you've got the right to keep 'em, I'll be back." He tipped his hat toward Lily. "Take care now, little miss." And then he mounted up and rode off. Silas watched him disappear down the trail, fists clenched at his sides. Inside the cabin, the air felt heavier. Thomas looked up at him. "Are we going to have to leave?" Silas turned, took a deep breath, and shook his head. "Not if I got anything to say about it." Lily stepped forward. "Can you really stop him?" "I can try." "And I will. But I'll need to know everything. Where you came from. If there's any kin, any papers." She nodded, then hesitated. "There's something. A letter Mama wrote before she died. We kept it in the satchel." Silas grabbed it from the corner and opened the flap. Inside was a folded piece of yellowing paper, creased a dozen times over. He opened it slowly. It was a letter addressed to the kind soul who finds my children. Silas read the first few lines in silence. His jaw tightened. His hands shook just a little. "She was a skin for someone to keep him safe," he murmured. "Not the law, not the sheriff. Just someone decent." He looked at Lily. "You think your mama meant me?" Lily nodded. "I do now." Silas looked back out the window toward the horizon, where the dust from Clay's horse was still settling. "I reckon we better give her what she asked for." And with that, the fight to keep the children had begun. The letter was worn thin in Silas's calloused hands. The ink faded in places, smudged in others. But the words still carried weight enough to make his chest ache. "To the kind soul who finds my children. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. Please know they are good, brave little ones. Lily will try to carry the weight. She always does. Thomas will follow her, even into the dark. I beg you, if you have any room in your heart, give them a chance. Don't let them be swallowed by the world." Silas read it twice, then a third. Time, seated at the edge of the porch while Lily watched him from the steps. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest, chin resting atop them. Her eyes didn't leave him once. "She wrote that the night she started coughing," Lily said quietly. "Said she didn't know if she'd get better. Daddy wanted her to rest, but Mama, she always planned for the worst." Silas nodded slowly. "She was wise too. She made me promise I'd keep Thomas safe no matter what." Lily's voice broke slightly. "That I'd be his big sister and his mama if I had to." "You've done right by him," Silas said, folding the letter carefully and tucking it back into the satchel. "You've done more than most grown folks would." Inside, Thomas was napping in a patched-up bedroll by the hearth, Buck curled up beside him like a furry guardian. The boy had worn himself out chasing chickens and trying to teach Buck how to herd pine cones. "Sheriff's coming back," Lily said, barely above a whisper. "I know. He'll take us." Silas shook his head. "Not without a fight." Lily looked at him then, not like a child, but like someone older than her years. "You don't owe us anything, Mr. Silas." "Maybe not," he said. But that don't matter." She was quiet for a long while, then asked, "Why are you helping us?" Silas stared out across the pasture where the horses grazed in peace, under a sky turning gold with afternoon light. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough. "I had a daughter once. Her name was Abigail. She was about your age when the fever took her, same way it took your pa. Quick, cruel." He paused. "She used to sit on this very step just like you are now. And every morning she'd run out to feed the chickens like it was a grand adventure." Lily didn't say a word. She just watched him. "When she died, I buried the world with her. Her and my wife both gone in the same year. After that, I stopped letting people in. Figured the fewer folks you care about, the fewer you lose." He looked at Lily now. "Then you and your brother showed up. And I remembered what it felt like to hear a child laugh. What it meant to see someone fight to protect their kin. You brought life back into this place." Silas cleared his throat and stood. "That letter? It ain't just ink and words. It's a mother's last wish, and I aim to see it honored." That afternoon, he rode into town. He didn't tell the children. Where he was going just said he had business and would be back before sundown. Lily didn't press. She only nodded and promised to keep Thomas busy. Silas rode with purpose. When he reached the sheriff's office, Clay Barlow looked up from him. A stack of papers and raised an eyebrow. "You got something for me?" Silas pulled the letter from his pocket and placed it on the desk. This was written by their mother before she died, asking for someone to look after her kids. Name signed at the bottom, Sarah Jameson. Barlow picked it up, reading silently. When he was done, he let out a long breath. "Well, that complicates things. I'd like to be appointed guardian, at least until we figure if they got other kin. You got proof you're blood?" "No," Silas said firmly, "but I got proof I care." Clay studied him, really looked at him. After a long pause, he rubbed his jaw and said, "I'll need to talk to the judge." "This ain't standard." "Nothing about these kids is standard," Clay nodded. "Give me 2 days." Silas tipped his hat, turned, and walked back out into the sunlight. When he returned to the ranch, Lily was sitting by the fence, braiding wildflowers. Thomas had caught a frog and was showing it to Buck. Silas didn't say anything right away. He just sat down beside Lily and looked out over the land that suddenly felt full again. Things might be rough for a little while. He finally said. Lily turned to him. "You're not giving up?" Silas shook his head. "Not a chance." She smiled faintly, then went back to her braiding, and in that moment, under the wide Texas sky, something unspoken settled between them. It wasn't blood. It was something stronger. Belonging. The air was too still. The kind of quiet that made Silas pause mid-swing with the axe, his hand tightening on the handle. He tilted his head, listening. No bird song. No breeze. Just the heavy hush that only came before trouble. He looked up. Dark clouds gathered in the western sky, swirling like spilled ink. A storm was coming fast. Lily. He called. She emerged from the barn, her arms full of hay. "I see it," she said, squinting toward the horizon. "Get Thomas inside, now, and make sure Buck's tied near the porch." She nodded and ran, calling her brother's name. Silas dropped the axe and moved quickly, latching the barn doors and double-checking the horses in the stable. His gut clenched. He'd seen storms like this before. Sudden, brutal, full of fury. By the time he got back to the cabin, the sky was a boiling mass of black. Lightning cracked across the hills. The wind hit necks dry and sharp, full of dust. It ripped across the land like a whip, bending trees and tearing loose anything not nailed. Down. Inside, Thomas sat huddled in the corner, eyes wide. Lily was trying to comfort him, but her own hands were shaking. Buck stood alert, ears back, growling low. Silas slammed the door shut and bolted it. "It's gonna hit hard," he said. "Stay away from the windows. Don't move unless I say." So, the storm rolled in like a freight train. Thunder boomed so loud the floor trembled. Rain came in sideways, hammering the roof like bullets. The wind howled through the cracks in the cabin, rattling everything not nailed down. A shutter tore free and banged against the wall outside. Thomas whimpered and covered his ears. "It's okay, buddy," Lily whispered. "We're safe. We're inside." But a moment later, the sound changed sharp, terrible, unmistakable. Crack. The bolt of lightning struck something nearby. A smell of smoke followed almost instantly. Silas's heart dropped. That hit the barn. He grabbed his coat and rifle. "Stay inside," he shouted. "Don't open the door." "Wait, what?" Lily jumped to her feet. "Where are you going? I've got livestock in there. I've got to try to save them." "You can't," she cried. "It's too dangerous." But Silas was already out the door, vanishing into the storm. Rain drenched him instantly. He could see smoke curling from the roof of the barn, even through the sheets of water. Flames flickered inside, small for now, but growing. He flung the doors open and released the terrified horses, slapping their flanks as they fled into the storm, whinnying in panic. The roof groaned overhead, the fire licking at the rafters now. Just as he turned to run, he heard another scream, but this one was human. Thomas. Silas single quotes as blood went cold. He ran back toward the house, slipping in the mud, boots pounding the ground. The cabin door was open. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second, he saw Lily on the porch, soaked and frantic. "Thomas ran after you," she screamed. "He thought you were in trouble. He went out back." Silas didn't wait. He tore around the side of the house, calling the boy's name. The wind screamed in his ears. The rain blinded him. Every second felt like an eternity. Then he saw a small figure huddled beneath the lone oak tree near the fence line, clutching the trunk, trembling, terrified. "Thomas!" The boy looked up and then slipped. Mud gave way under his feet, and he slid down the slope toward the creek. Silas launched forward. The world narrowed to one thing: reach him. He dove, catching the boy by the arm just before he slid into the rushing water. Thomas screamed, clinging to him with both arms. Silas grunted, bracing his boots against the rocks, dragging the boy back up inch by inch. Finally, they collapsed in the mud, both soaked, panting, shaken. "I'm sorry," Thomas sobbed. "I thought you needed help." Silas wrapped his arms around the boy, holding him close. "It's okay. I got you. You're safe." The rain still pounded them, but for a moment, Silas didn't feel it. All he felt was the small, shivering body against his chest and the unmistakable, aching swell in his heart. He carried Thomas back to the cabin, where Lily rushed to meet them. She threw her arms around her brother, crying and scolding all at once. "I told you not to go. I thought he was hurt. You scared me so bad." Silas stood in the doorway, soaked to the bone, chest heaving. The barn would burn. Some tools and supplies would be lost. But none of that mattered. His family was alive. That night, after the storm passed, Silas wrapped Thomas in a warm quilt and sat beside him until the boy finally fell asleep. Lily curled up in the armchair, exhausted but safe. Before he turned in, Silas gently brushed the hair from Thomas's forehead and whispered, "You're my boy now? You hear me?" The child didn't respond, already dreaming, but Silas knew. The words had weight. The storm had tested them, and it had bound them tighter than blood. The morning after the storm, the barn still smoldered, its rafters blackened and twisted. Smoke curled into the pale blue sky, carrying with it the scent of charred wood and burned hay. Silas stood quietly at the edge of the ruins, hands on his hips, jaw clenched. He had saved the horses. The cattle were safe, too. But the tools, feed, and winter supplies were gone. What had taken years to build had vanished in a single night. Behind him, Lily and Thomas helped clean debris near the porch. Neither complained. Thomas dragged small limbs and broken shingles into a pile while Lily swept the porch clear of ash. They didn't ask about the barn. They didn't ask what would happen next. They just worked shoulders set, hearts steady, but trouble didn't come in the form of flames that day. It came on horseback. Around noon, 4 riders appeared on the road leading up to the ranch. Silas recognized them even before they reached the gate. Mr. Pike, the local storekeeper, Deputy Halloran riding next to him, and 2 of the town's more vocal gossips, Mrs. Cathcart and her brother-in-law, Walt. They dismounted without a word and approached with tight-lipped expressions. Silas met them in front of the house, arms folded across his chest. Buck growled low behind him, nose twitching at the scent of unwelcome company. Pike spoke first. "We heard there was a fire. Figured we'd come see how bad it got." Silas raised a brow. "That so?" Halloran cleared his throat. "Lot of folks in town are asking questions, Silas, about the kids." Mrs. Cathcart stepped forward, arms crossed over her tightly cinched bodice. "It's no secret they ain't yours. Strays brought in like mongrel pups." Lily and Thomas had stepped out onto the porch by now, watching silently. Lily's hand was wrapped around Thomas's like a vice. "They ain't strays," Silas said, his voice calm but sharp. "They're under my care now. You filed guardianship papers yet?" Halloran asked. "Judge is reviewing them." "Should have word any day," Walt snorted. "They don't belong here. They should be in an orphanage, not playing house on. A burned-up ranch with a man who barely talks to anyone." Silas's eyes flashed. "They're more family to me than most folks in this town." Mrs. Cathcart pressed her lips tight. "It's not about feelings, Mr. Rourke. It's about what's proper. And frankly, we don't think it's appropriate for an old widower to be keeping two unrelated children under his roof." Pike stepped in, trying to sound reasonable. "Look, Silas, we all know you've been through loss, but this ain't just about you. If the kids end up hurt or worse, that blood's on all our hands." "You think I'd let that happen?" Silas snapped, voice rising for the first time. "You didn't stop that barn from burning." Walt muttered. "That did it." Silas took a step forward, eyes like steel. "That barn went up in a lightning strike. I pulled that boy out of the storm. Myself. You want to accuse me of something, do it proper right to my face. Otherwise, take your cowardly concerns and get off my land." Halloran raised his hands in surrender. "Let's all cool down. We just came to talk. You've talked. Now ride on." There was a long, heavy silence. Then Pike gave a small nod, turned back to his horse, and mounted up. The others followed, some grumbling under their breath. Within minutes, the dust from their departure drifted away down the trail. Silas stood still for a long time after they left. Only when the sound of hooves faded did he turn to face the children. "I'm sorry." "You had to hear that," he said. "They hate us," Thomas said quietly. "No," Silas answered. "They're scared. Scared of what they don't understand. Of people who show up unexpected and bring change." Lily looked at him, chin lifted. "We're not leaving, are we?" Silas shook his head. "No, we're not. Let 'em talk." "Let 'em squawk. We'll keep working, keep living. And if we have to fight harder, then that's what we'll do." That night, Silas repaired a part of the corral with Lily's help, while Thomas painted small boards they planned to use for a new chicken coop. They ate supper by lantern light, the kitchen warm despite the storm's damage and the town's coldness, and just before bed, Silas reached into a drawer and pulled out a small object, a silver star. Not a real badge, just something carved. Long ago, for his daughter to play sheriff, he handed it to Thomas. "What's this?" The boy asked. "Means you're deputy of this ranch," Silas said. "Your job's to protect it, just like I do." Thomas's eyes sparkled. "Even if folks don't like us?" Silas nodded. "Especially then." And as the wind whistled low through the eaves, the little family huddled close, weathering the judgment of a town that didn't yet understand. They didn't need permission to belong. They just needed each other. The next morning brought a stillness that felt different from the quiet before the storm. This one was filled with waiting. The barn still smoldered, the townsfolk's visit still lingered, and Silas knew the sheriff would return any day. He just didn't expect the knock on the door to come from someone new. Buck barked once and trotted to the door. Silas set down the harness he was repairing and opened it to find a man in a crisp brown coat and wide-brimmed hat, carrying a worn leather satchel and a cane he didn't quite need. He had city eyes sharp, fast-moving and a dust-covered. Color that didn't belong in the Texas sun. Silas Rourke? The man asked, tipping his hat. Name's Merritt Crawford. Attorney out of Abilene. I believe I've got business with you. Regarding the Jameson children. Silas narrowed his eyes. Go on. Merritt stepped inside and removed his hat, careful to wipe his boots on the mat. Lily watched from the kitchen table, clutching Thomas's hand. The lawyer's presence made her uneasy, and Silas could feel her eyes on him, waiting for a signal. I was appointed by a circuit court in Kansas Territory, Merritt began. Their father, Robert Jameson, drew up a will about 6 months ago. It was never filed officially. He couldn't afford the court fee, but it's valid, witnessed, and notarized by hand. He named a guardian for the children should anything happen to him. Silas stiffened. Who? Merritt opened his satchel, pulled out a folded document, and set it gently on the table. A cousin in Oklahoma Territory. Jeremiah Jameson. Lives near Fort Sill. Farmer, war veteran, no record of criminal activity. He's blood, so the law tends to favor him. Silas stared down at the paper like it might bite. Lily stood up, slowly, eyes darting from the letter to the lawyer. We don't know anyone named Jeremiah, Merritt nodded. Your father hadn't seen him in years. But legally, it gives the cousin claim unless someone contests it. Silas's voice was quiet but firm. And what does he say? I wired him 2 days ago. He said he's willing to take them, but... Merritt hesitated, glancing at the children, then back at Silas. He doesn't sound eager. Said he's got 5 of his own, 1 of them sick. He'll do it if the court orders it, but it didn't sound like he'd consider it a blessing. Silas felt the air shift. And what do you say? He asked. Merritt looked around the cabin at the quilted bedroll, the small wooden horse on the windowsill, the smell of warm stew on the stove. At Lily, who now stood between her brother and this stranger, like a barrier made of bones and courage. I say this doesn't look like a temporary arrangement, Merritt said. It looks like a family. Silas didn't move. Then why bring the will? Because I'm an officer of the court, Merritt said. I follow the law. But I'm also a man. And I've seen enough of this world to know when the law's lagging behind what's right. He reached back into his satchel and pulled out a blank petition form. You want to contest the cousin's claim? He asked. Then sign this. Submit it to the judge when he comes next week. He'll review it, hear testimony. Might still rule in favor of bloodkin. But he doesn't have to. He can rule in favor of the children's best interest. Lily stepped closer. Do we have to go? Live with that man? Silas looked her in the eyes. Not if I've got anything to say about it, Merritt nodded, satisfied. Then I'll leave this with you. He packed his papers and hat, nodded to the children, and tipped his head to Silas. You've got 4 days until the hearing. Make your case. If anyone can change the judge's mind, it's the man who ran into a burning barn and pulled a boy out of a flood. As the lawyer rode off down the trail, Thomas tugged on Silas's sleeve. Do we have to go away again? Silas knelt in front of him, hands on the boy's shoulders. Not if we stick together. But we have to fight smart, real smart. Lily placed the petition on the table. What do we do first? Silas looked at her, proud and heartbroken all at once. We prepare, he said. We tell the truth. And we show them that family ain't always about blood, it's about who shows up. That night, he lit a lantern and sat at the table with Lily, helping her write down everything she remembered about her parents, the journey, the night they lost their father. Thomas sat close, drawing pictures of the ranch with a piece of charcoal and scrap wood. The storm was gone. The barn was gone, but what remained was stronger. A ranch with walls scorched by fire and a home held together by love. The day of the hearing came hot and dry, with the sky like hammered tin and the sun burning low over Dusty Ridge's old courthouse. It was no grand place, just a converted one-room schoolhouse, with a fresh coat of white paint and a flag that flapped lazily in the wind. Silas arrived with Lily and Thomas in tow, both dressed in their cleanest clothes. Lily wore a faded blue dress, her hair pulled back with a borrowed ribbon. Thomas clutched his wooden deputy star in his hand like it was a lucky charm. Silas wore the same black vest he'd worn the day he buried his wife, a garment he hadn't touched in nearly a decade. Inside, the benches were nearly full. The townsfolk had come, Mrs. Cathcart, Pike, Deputy Halloran, even the mailman. Some were curious. Others looked smug, like they expected the law to undo what had been slowly built on Silas's ranch. And in the front row sat Merritt Crawford, calm and composed, papers folded neatly in his lap. At the judge's bench sat an older man with a sun-browned face and a no-nonsense expression, Judge Alden Graves. He was known across 3 counties for his straight spine and hard eyes, but also for listening, really listening, before making a ruling. He tapped the gavel. "We're here for the matter of custody concerning Lily and Thomas Jameson, children left orphaned following the death of Robert and Sarah Jameson. 2 claims stand, one by blood, a cousin in Oklahoma Territory named Jeremiah Jameson. The other by Mr. Silas Rourke, a local rancher who took the children in after their father's passing." The courtroom went still. Merritt stood first. "Your Honor, we submit the late Robert Jameson's written will, naming Jeremiah Jameson as guardian. However," he held up another document, "we also submit a petition from Mr. Rourke to assume guardianship, citing the children's welfare and well-being." Judge Graves took both papers and read them silently. Then he looked at the children. "Did they wish to speak?" Lily stood slowly, eyes locked on the judge. "I do, sir." She walked to the front of the room, back straight, hands folded. The room held its breath. "My name is Lily Mae Jameson. I'm 12. And I know what the law says about blood and kin. But sometimes kin don't show up. Mr. Silas did." Her voice was small, but steady. "He didn't know us, but he gave us food and a warm place to sleep. He chased down a storm to find Thomas. He lets me help with the horses. He listens to me. Not like a servant, like someone who matters." She paused, swallowed, and looked toward Silas. "We weren't just safe there. We were wanted. And that's the first time I felt that since Mama died." Gasps stirred softly in the crowd. Judge Graves nodded slowly. "And your brother?" Thomas stood up. He didn't walk to the front. He just raised his voice the best he could from the bench. "I want to stay with Mr. Silas," he said. "He calls me son sometimes. I like that." There were a few chuckles, but even Mrs. Cathcart looked down at her hands. Silas was called next. He rose, stepped forward, and removed his hat. "I ain't a man who talks much, Judge. Never been good at it. But I know what it feels like to bury a child. And I know what it feels like to wish you hadn't survived. Those kids walked into my life and brought the breath back into me." He cleared his throat, hands shaking slightly. "I don't have much to offer. Just a patch of land and a heart that's got a few cracks in it. But it beats strong, for them." He looked over at the children. "They're mine, whether the court sees it or not. I just need the law to catch up to what we already know." Silence hung for a beat too long. Then Judge Graves spoke. "Has Jeremiah Jameson appeared?" "No, Your Honor," Merritt said. "Only a telegram confirming willingness, not desire." Graves nodded, then leaned back in his chair, eyes thoughtful. "The law favors blood, yes, but it also favors what is just. And justice, true justice, is not just in the letter, but in the spirit." He lifted the papers again. "I hereby grant full guardianship of Lily and Thomas Jameson to Mr. Silas Rourke." Gasps filled the room. Lily's hand flew to her mouth. Thomas dropped his wooden star and whooped, jumping up in the pew. Silas just stood there, stunned, then slowly let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding for weeks. Outside the courthouse, townsfolk gathered around. Pike approached first, clearing his throat awkwardly. "You ever need nails or seeds, Silas? It's on the house." Mrs. Cathcart nodded, subdued. "Seems I misjudged you. Kids look different, like they belong." "They do," Silas said simply. As they mounted their wagon to head home, Lily looked over at Silas. "So what are we now?" Silas cracked a rare smile. "We're family." And the word never sounded more true. Summer faded slowly into fall, and with it came a rhythm the ranch hadn't known in years. A peaceful, steady heartbeat. Mornings began with the sound of Thomas giggling as he chased Buck around the coop, trying to beat the rooster to the first egg. Lily had taken over the garden, proud of her row of carrots and how she kept the rabbits out with a string of old tin cans. Silas rose early, as always, but now there was a reason to put on fresh coffee and sliced bread for 3 instead of 1. The barn had been rebuilt with help from neighbors, some out of guilt, others out of quiet respect. Pike brought lumber from his own shed, and Halloran showed up with nails and muscle, never saying much, just hammering alongside Silas in the glow of dusk. Even Mrs. Cathcart arrived one morning with 2 baskets, one filled with biscuits, the other with cuttings for Lily to plant. The town, once skeptical and cold, had come around, but it was the children who made the difference. Lily had earned a name at the trading post for being clever, polite, and quick with numbers. Thomas charmed everyone, especially the blacksmith, who built him a wooden stirrup so he could ride a pony properly. Their laughter reached far and wide. Their presence had stitched something back together, not just on the ranch, but in Silas himself. One night, as the first chill of autumn crept in, Lily sat on the porch in her new shawl. The stars were bright, and the wind carried the scent of dry leaves and wood smoke. "Do you miss them?" she asked quietly. Silas didn't need to ask who. "Every day," he said, settling beside her. "But it don't hurt the same anymore." Lily nodded. "Sometimes I think I still hear Mama humming, and Daddy telling Thomas to stop picking his nose." Silas chuckled, and Lily smiled. "I think they'd be proud of you," he added softly. She looked up at him. "Of us, you mean?" He met her eyes. "Yeah, of us." The door creaked, and Thomas poked his head out, holding a piece of paper covered in scribbles. "I drew us again," he announced proudly. Silas held it up to the lamplight. A child's drawing. A man with a big hat, a girl with braids, a boy with a dog, and a ranch with smoke curling from the chimney. At the top, in crooked letters, Thomas had written, "Our home." Silas felt something in his chest loosen, something that had been clenched for far too long. "Looks just about perfect," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. That weekend, Silas took them to town for a harvest dance. Lily wore a dress Merritt Crawford had mailed from Abilene, and Thomas wore boots that were still too big but clomped with pride. Silas hadn't danced in years, but Lily pulled him into a 2-step with no room for refusal. When folks asked, he didn't say they're orphans. He said, "These are my kids." It felt good on his tongue, right? True. Later that night, under the stars, Silas stood by the barn, arms folded, watching the wind dance through the wheat fields. He thought about what it meant to lose everything and to find something better than you ever expected waiting in its place. Not a second chance. A new chance. A porch filled with stories. A table set for 3. A future no longer haunted by silence. Thomas ran past him with Buck close behind, shouting, "I'm faster than lightning." Lily followed, laughing breathlessly. "Only when you cheat." And Silas just smiled. He didn't need a bloodline to know what he was. He was their father now in every way that counted. And after so much sorrow, so much fire and wind and doubt, he had found what he didn't think still existed, a reason to believe again, a family, a home, and the door would always be open.